Hey, what are you up to? Shh! Don't distract me. Why? I'm monitoring. Are you in NASA mission control room? This is even more serious, man. You're monitoring what exactly? I'm monitoring all my deployed machine learning models, endpoints, machine learning pipelines, compute utilization, data access records, job run logs, experiment logs, cost and billing, model status, response latency to real-time models, data exchange access, thousands of... Shh. All good. Sounds like a rap song. Are you really manually monitoring all those stuff with your eyes? Yeah, you have a better way? Of course, there's much better way to do it. You can automate and enable monitoring in Azure ML and even receive alerts based on condition you set up. Easy. Okay, then you show it to me. One pipeline failed. Anyways, let's go. Hello everyone, this is MG. Hope you're doing great and welcome to another video. You might be already a data scientist or machine learning engineer or administrator, and you have thought about the fact that there are too many things you need to monitor in aspect of monitoring your machine learning models, whether they are batch, real-time, your machine learning pipelines, endpoints, your experiments, jobs, accessing to the data, and making sure end-to-end from your development all the way to production is sort of clarified enough that you can tackle any specific events or alerts. And you can even receive notifications based on those specific alerts. Let's say through an email, you want to get notified that one of your models got failed or your pipelines got failed. So have you ever thought about how you can achieve this through machine learning on Azure or Azure ML monitoring? If you're curious to figure that out, then this is the right video for you, and let's check it out.
Before we start, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon so you will get notified for the next video. Thank you. Alright, now let's dig into monitoring specifically in Azure Machine Learning. So if you're a data scientist watching this video, if you're an ML engineer, or if you're an infrastructure team, there's something that you can certainly gain from this video. And what I have tried is sort of summarizing all components that can be monitored, specifically again through Azure ML, or that can be extended to any ML project in different platforms that even you're using. So sort of giving you an idea what needs to get monitored for MLOps process, right? So as a data scientist, you might have already heard about some other tools, open source services that can be leveraged to track your machine learning experiments. Let's say MLflow can be used for model tracking stuff. There's a video I created how you can use MLflow in Azure ML, so I will add the video to the top right of the screen. Check that out. TensorBoard, within the training, you can even launch it to monitor the progress of training. So still all those data science oriented model training stuff for monitoring, even if they're open source tools, that can be certainly used and leveraged in your Azure ML environment, in your notebooks, like other Pythonic environment that you develop. You can still leverage them to have your monitoring capabilities enriched with those components. Or let's say data drift. We talked about data drift in another video. Again, I will add the video of data drift to the top right of the screen here. Check that out. So we already talked about how you can monitor data drift in your machine learning project through Azure ML. Now, in this video, we're gonna dig in further and discuss what else we can monitor that can be even beyond just data science. It's in general what we can monitor in our machine learning projects when we are in Azure ML. So there are too many logs and different events that you can track here. What I did, I'm not going to go through one by one each row. That's going to be a very long and even boring video, but I try to add the snapshot of each so you can use this video as a reference coming back and sort of see a summarized logs and metrics you can monitor in Azure ML. So let's start with the first one, model here. Any machine learning model based activity you do in Azure ML, they can sort of get monitored. For example, we know that in Azure ML we can register our models. If they get succeeded, failed, they're gonna be tracked and monitored. If they're gonna get deployed and the deployment failed or succeeded, we can also have them logged in Azure ML. So not only just from model event activities, even from model deployment activities, let's say here when we go through online or real-time model deployment, let's say I have a model, I deploy in real time to make it as an API in Azure ML and call the model for inferencing, right? So here are all different logs related to online endpoints. You can sort of track them. Specifically coming to traffic, this is very important. So making sure, for example, we know what is the latency or delays that we sort of requested data to transfer it to the endpoint. Let's say due to networking stuff, there might be some delays. Or if we had some failed request, if we can get out the total payload size that someone requested this model to do inferencing. So this is the size of the payload we receive from the user that is calling our model. Or what is the status of the model in this real-time endpoint. So check that out. This is sort of a summarized table that from reference, Azure Microsoft reference, that talks about different logs that can be captured from a model that is deployed real-time. Beyond just models are just one piece of machine learning, right? We do have pipelines, we have our jobs, we have our runs that we execute our experiments. So if you have, for example, a pipeline that get failed, that can be a training pipeline, inferencing pipeline, featureization pipeline, they can be logged as well. So for example, here we can say, give me the total number of the runs that got started, by who, if they have errors, what is the status of those runs, if they're not started, if they're finalized, if they failed, you can capture all of them. Beyond that, when we have captured all these runs and let's say pipeline related logs, okay, then what kind of columns we have in that log, what kind of information we have in that log. Here's a snapshot of that. So when you capture some events related to pipelines, here's what you can see in pipeline event table. So you can see, for example, who initiated that pipeline, what is that pipeline ID, what is the status of that pipeline, if it failed or not, what is the endpoint ID of that pipeline, if you have published that pipeline as an example, what is the operation name you have specified in that pipeline, what is the result type, what is the status of that pipeline, is it in progress, succeeded or no. Let's say my batch pipeline that I'm doing inferencing every day got failed. Okay, let's check that out and get all this information, or even get alert automatically if that pipeline failed, which we're going to talk about alerting shortly as well. Then talking about model events, we talked about in general when you register a model, if a model got failed, you can get them all captured. But for the model deployment and model events in general, you can not only get all those information, plus you can see even the time that they got generated, what was the result type, the operation name, again the identity of the user who, let's say, performed model registry under what Azure AD tenant, and what was the Azure ML workspace name, because you might have multiple hundreds of Azure ML workspaces, so you have to make sure in your log there is a key you can distinguish the logs coming from different workspaces, right? So you have that as well. Quota. This is, I think, more important for admin, not necessarily data scientists. You know that when you create a compute, you have a limitation aspect of how many computes, how many cores of compute you can create. These codes are applied by, let's say, your cloud or IT team to make sure we have limited number of computes that can get generated and built in Azure ML. So it is a very good practice to sort of create an alert for these codes. If, let's say, we have unusable cores, or how many cores are idle, active ones, what is the percentage utilization. Let's say out of 100% of our cores, we have used 99% of them. So if we reach to that threshold, we're going to receive an email, hey, you are reaching a code limit, your data scientist might get blocked. Let's increase the code, as an example. So you can have, again, all these compute codes related information get logged as well. Resources, this can be also important for data scientists as well. If you want to know what is, let's say, GPU utilization for a deep learning model that you're training, you can get the percentage of that and all different type of computes and their logs as mentioned in the table. So you can check that out, and they're all going to get captured as well. And in general activities, any sort of update on machine learning workspace, let's say updating some compute resource, deleting them, creating new ones, listing secret stuff, these type of activities also will get logged and monitored in Azure ML. Okay, now lastly, here in this table, it is summarizing the categories of different logs that you can have them in Azure ML. We talked about Model related logs, model deployment stuff. We talked about compute logs, compute utilization logs. We talked about deployment logs. Also, deployment on Azure Container Instance or Kubernetes as well gonna get logged. Inferencing logs. We talked about when you have an online endpoint, a real-time model, you can have some logs about the latency, the payload, the size of the request that you receive from the user for doing inferencing. So all of them get captured. And here's the rest of this table. Related to the data set, we didn't talk about this. You know that we register data as a data set in Azure ML, right? So read gonna get captured as an event. Changing any data set gonna captured as an event. What else? Data drift we talked about in a separate view. That's a separate thing. Data labeling. You know that there is a tool called data labeling in Azure ML that you can label your data for, let's say, computer vision, NLP. So the changes related to data labeling projects can get captured as well. Okay, all right. So that was about the summary of the sort of the logs and different activities you can capture. As you can see, some of them are necessarily important for infrastructure teams, some of them for ML engineering teams, some of them can be also important for data scientists. Let's see how we can enable capturing these logs and how we can set up alerts and in general how we can see these in action in Azure Portal. Okay, let me launch my Azure Portal. All right. So majority of these logs that we all just talked about, they do not necessarily get tracked and stored by themselves. You have to enable it. So what do I mean by enabling? If you go to any Azure ML workspace, let's say the first one, MG demo I created, I want to start tracking all these logs and stuff that we talked about, right? So when you open on the left side, there's something called diagnostic settings. You have to enable this, and after enabling these, all those capture gonna get start tracked. So I clicked on that. You can see that I already enabled diagnostic setting and I called it AML, but let's see how I did it. Again, these are the information we already talked about them that they're gonna get captured. So let's add diagnostic setting. You have to give it a name, let's say tests 1, 2, 3. And then here you have to specify, okay, what sort of logs you want to capture. Since we already talked about them, so these must be familiar for you. Let's say I want to capture all metrics, all logs, sort of everything, right? And now I have to say that, okay, where you want to store these logs. You can see that there are 4 different destiny that we can have these logs stored. I can push them in Log Analytics workspace. What is it? Log Analytics is a separate service on Azure that can host your logs, so you can go write down your queries and retrieve your logs and create dashboard and stuff. This is an Azure service that you have to create it first if you want to push your logs of Azure ML to the service. How you can create it? Easy. Just type Azure Log Analytics on the portal. Just follow up, create a new one. I already created. That's why you can see there's one called default workspace. And I use already this one to send all my logs. Or you can send your logs to a storage account, let's say to Blob, or even both. You can enable it here and then specify your storage account. And the other options would be a streaming, like if you have some real-time logs and you want to stream them all to an event hub, you can do that as well. And lastly, send it to a partner. Again, you have to specify a potential partner integration first if you want to send the logs to the partner for further analysis, which I don't have it in this case. So, and that's it. You click on save, you're done. I already did it, so I'm not going to do it again. And that's why in diagnostic settings, I have one called AML. If I created the second one, I would see that it's called test 1, 2, 3, added here. Okay, now I'm starting logging these. Where can I capture them, right? So again, on the left side, you can see both logs and metrics. Let me click on metrics as an example. Here I can specify the scope of the metrics I want to retrieve. So for example, first I want to specify what workspace I'm gonna retrieve the log analytics from, the logs from. So I call it MG demo. This is the name of the workspace that I have to grab these metrics from there. Then this is a machine learning service. That's the metric namespace. And what is the metric? Again, this is the stuff we already talked about. Model deployment, model fail stuff. I don't think I have any logs for now. Yes. So for this is for what? Last 24 hours, I think. Yeah. It's for the last 24 hours. You can also change it. I don't have any, let's say, model deployment failed. That's why there's nothing here. And then you can save as a dashboard. Or let's say, here, I want to actually set up an alert. If one model deployment failed, I want to get some alerts, right? So you say, I want to create a new alert rule. So here, You need to specify, okay, under what condition you want to receive alert. Let's say I have a threshold. If even one model failed, I want to receive an alert. So it is static. The threshold is 1, but you can also make it dynamic. So I would say if the total model failed, log, let's say for the past 5 minutes, right? Or let's say for the past 24 hours. If any model failed greater than or equal to even just 1, I want to receive an alert. Check this monitoring every 5 minutes as an example, and when you do it, check all the models got failed for the last 24 hours, and if you meet this threshold, give me an alert. I have nothing here, that's why it's not shown. And okay, so if you want to add a specific condition, you can also add here. Again, these are related to Azure ML, some of them. And then I'll go to action. Okay, you received that alert. That's it. It will send you an email. So what you want to do, what email, what the specific notification type you're going to receive. This is the place you have to specify. I want to create an action group. Here I would say, let's give it a name. This is alert team. Okay. And clicking on next. Okay. There you go. What type of notification I'm going to receive? That can be email, SMS, push, voice, whatever I would say. Let's say email. Give it a name. Let's say my email. And here I need to set up, okay, that action group that you're creating, what is their role? Are they just they can read, they can do something, they can own, they're a contributor? I would say they're just reader. Okay. And then clicking on next. Sorry, let me go back. The other thing is actually if you can directly specify your email, so you can even add another cancel notification type. Here again, direct email. Okay, let me finish this. There you go. I would say email, SMS, mobile app. Okay, I want to go with email. You specify your email. Let's say there you go, and that's it. I click on OK, and it says that okay, this one will send an email to this person you specified. You can even add multiple emails, multiple numbers, any type of notification you want. I click on next. Okay, action, this is optional, but let's say you don't want to wait for people check out those alerts and then do something. Maybe you can have a code in, let's say in Azure function, a Python code that will automatically do redeployment, like deploying the model again if it got failed, as an example. So you can have that a code in the Python using Azure ML SDK in Azure function that deploy the model again. For here I have nothing to specify, so I can just skip it. Lastly, optional if you want to add some tags, and then that's it. You click on review and create, your alert will be there. Let's actually do it. Create. So it's creating the action group that I specify, alert team, which has one email inside, which is me, and I have now this alert specified based on the query that I have here. If you want to query by yourself, you go to the logs, and here are some of the predefined queries, the well-known queries for Azure ML. Let's say request the history of accessing to container images in Azure ML, which is called environments, right? Or display the top longest jobs. If you have a huge training pipelines running in, let's capture the top 5, the longest ones. Or online endpoint, this is a cool one. If you have a real-time model that got failed, let's see what is the query. Here's the query. You can see that it is calling any logs related to Azure ML online endpoints, and if they got failed, it will sort of capture some specific information, parse them, and show you the first, let's say 100 rows. Again, I have nothing, no model deployed here, so that's why the result is empty. You can even run it here, save it here, and you can rerun it again after when you save it. Or any different type of query you want. You cannot just go with the predefined one. You can go with any custom query. Let's say if I'm gonna go with some dataset events, Here are all information that you can grab from the data. We already talked about them. And you need to, but of course you need to write down the query by yourself, similar to this one. All right, now you might question where I can start. I know there are too many things I can query. There are some already predefined queries here on the query section. Here there are all the tables that we have in Azure ML, so I can query any of these here. We talked about metrics. Let me go back to the metrics. We talked about how we can just through the UI quickly visualize some metrics. Let's say again CPU capacity stuff, and have the chart, save it, and also we create an alert based on a specific metrics we specified. You can even create more here, more action group, what type of actions you can do when you receive these alerts. We talked about them, that you saw Azure function was an action type as well. Now, do we have a quick way to start? Because I want to create a dashboard, let's say, that I have my, not all the logs that I want get visualized in that dashboard, so I'm not going to come back here, run the logs again and again, or run the queries again and again. The answer is yes, and actually there's a very nice quick start template that I'm gonna add this to the video description, that this one will generate for you automatically a dashboard template that that has some of the well-known or very useful logs that is needed for machine learning and Azure ML. Let me maximize this a little bit. For example, you can see the job statistics of the Azure ML workspace is already here. Job failed, daily cost. This is a nice one. Each individual circle here is your Azure ML workspace, and you can see how much each Azure ML workspace is generating in aspect of cost daily. Dataset accessed by users. You can see the user IDs and usernames got access for a specific dataset name. Existing computes, job failed, the longest jobs, total cluster nodes counts. What is this one? Compute cluster utilization. This is also very interesting. So let's deploy this. What you need to do, just click on deploy to Azure. I already deployed this, so I'm just going to quickly show you how I did it. Select your Microsoft Azure account, and let's wait a bit to get loaded. There you go. So what you need to do, just select the resource group that you want to deploy this template, the region, give it a name for the dashboard. I think the name is chosen automatically from the template. This is very important. Here, I told you need to create a log analytics workspace first. So I told you how. Just click on just type log analytics, and there you go. It will come here, create a new workspace, and then paste the name of the workspace here. And when you create a log analytics workspace, you need to specify under which resource group you want to create that log analytics workspace, and then paste that resource group name as well here. Then click on review and create. That's it. And here it is what's gonna happen. So let me close. Let me check where is the dashboard. There you go, I found it. So this is what you will see as soon as you click on deploy. It will give you a shared dashboard with a specific name. And if I click on go to dashboard, there you go. Okay, yes, that makes sense. I have no specific logs to show because I just enabled diagnostic settings yesterday. So there's no log shipped to this dashboard yet, and I haven't used that workspace as well. But as you can see on the right side, I have multiple workspaces, and I can see the daily cost of each of them, which is pretty cool. Honestly, this is my favorite part because now I have visibility on the cost in one shot for all the workspace that I have, and the data set accessed. It's just me, the only person using that workspace, and I have two specific data sets that I got access to. And let's see the total cluster nodes that I have for that specific for my workspaces. I can specify it here, and there you go. These clusters are coming from the largest ones are coming from MG demo workspace. So because I have just one Azure workspace here. Again, for you, that might be a different scenario. When you enable it, wait for a bit, you will generate the logs, and this dashboard is a quick way to start. You can export it, delete it, and use it as something to even further edit and customize it. So it is good to start, or even good enough to have this template for have visibility on monitoring your stuff. All right, again, that was a lot of things we covered about monitoring, and I know that based on your current role, some of this stuff is not something you're interested in as a data scientist. Some of them you will be, specifically when it comes to models. And beyond just that, if you want to specifically, let's say, monitor model drift, For models, when you deploy your models real time or batch, you have to collect the inputs of your model and even the outputs, and then have your own custom code. Let's say you run it weekly, daily, to check out the output of the models and input of the models and see the performance of the model. So if you see, let's say, a drift happening in the accuracy, then you have to set up an alert. So how you can do it? Again, you have to create your own code and automate it in a pipeline, and you can send custom logs to Azure Monitor. In case you didn't see the log that you want to log on all those tables in the slide, you can log anything you want, send it there, and you saw how you create alert. So create alert based on your own custom logs, let's say your custom model drift, and then have the alert back, get notified, and do a proper action. If you're interested to know further details about, let's say, model drift monitoring, again, there is no, as of now that I'm recording this video, there is no specific direct one-shot, one-click feature that you can enable model drift, something like what we did for data drift, but we never know, it might come in future. So that's why for now, for those specific ML related or model related monitoring and model drift or concept drift monitoring, you have to create your own custom logs, custom code, and still use Azure Monitor for hosting those logs and Azure Alert on Monitor for get notified and do an action properly. All right, that's it for this video.
Life is already happening to you while you're busy with making other plans. Dream big, my friends, believe in yourself, and take action. We'll see you shortly in the next video. Bye for now.